In this lesson, we will talk about drill down report. Drill down report includes 3 sections, including Section 1, Report Linkage Structure, which introduces the master substructure of this report. Section 2, Report Design. We will design 3 reports, including Master Report Order List, First Level Sub-Report Order Detail, and Second Level Sub-Report Product Detail. Section 3 will include hyperlinks and parameters. We add hyperlinks and path parameter to achieve the linkage effect. First of all, this is a report linkage structure. As the picture shown, we have 3 reports A, B, and C, which A is a master report, and it is order list. We can just call it report A. The second report is a sub-report. It is order detail, and we can call it report B. The third report is also a sub-report. It is product detail. We call it report C. From report A to report B, it will transfer the parameter order ID, and B can return to report A. And from report B to report C, it will transfer order ID and product ID, and report C can return to report B as well. Let's take a look at the final results. This is report A, which is a master report. We can pick one of the order ID, for example 10319, and it will transfer to report B, order detail, with the same ID. And it shows different product ID. We can pick one of it. For example, we pick 76. Then it will link to the sub-report C, product detail, with all the information of product ID 76. Then we can click back. We can go back to report B, and we click back again, it will return to report A. In the next section, we will talk about the report design. We will be creating 3 basic reports, which is Master Report A, Order List, First Level Sub-Report, Order Detail, and Second Level Sub-Report, Product Detail. Let's create Report A first. Some steps are just simply style designing. I will just accelerate the process. For more information, you can see our previous videos. Create a database query by entering the SQL query as shown. Take a preview of the dataset and hit OK. Drag from the dataset the order ID, custom ID, order date, and paid or not to the third line. And select from left to right. Then we add the corresponding titles for the data. Then we add a title for the master report. In order to make the report look good, we can adjust the format. After we're done designing, we can save the file and preview. You can see the master report as shown. Now let's design Report B, the order detail. Creating a database query by adding the parameter order ID and set the default order ID 10248. Let's drag all the variables except the purchasing price and enter a title row for them. Add a total amount on the last column. The formula is equal to C3 times D3 times 1 minus E3. Then we check the validity and click OK. And add a subtotal on E4. The formula is sum F3. Then we will do some basic style designing, and I will accelerate the process. Then we can save Report B and take a preview. This is the order detail of default order ID 10248. The last report C is a product detail. Create a database query. It will be like following. We add the parameter product ID and set the default to 17. Hit OK. Select product ID, product name, supplier, unit price, and company name, content name, address, telephone, and drag it to row 3 from left to right. Add a title row and a title. Then we just simply designing the report. We can see the design of Report C is all set. Then we will talk about section 3, which is adding hyperlinks and path parameter to achieve the linkage effect. First, let's review the structure report A, transfer order ID, and drill down to report B with the corresponding order detail. Then we open up report A order list and add a hyperlink on the data of order ID. We add the hyperlink on the data of order ID link to web report and select the report B we just created. The link opened in current window. For the parameter, we add one of the parameter order ID. And the value can be string date formula, and we pick formula here and enter $3. Here we are all set with the hyperlink and passing parameter. We can rename the hyperlink, for example, drill to B. It is very clear. Here we have summarized the process, which includes the passing parameters. We write the parameter and its value in report A and set the target report B. The parameter we set in hyperlink will be passed to the target report, which means if the parameter exists in report B, then the value will be set as in this hyperlink. If our target report does not have the value of the parameter, then report B will store as in the hyperlink. If there are some values left, it will be what it originally as in the target report, as a part showing on the upper right on this page. Take the passing of report A and B as an example. For here, A passes the parameter of order ID to B, and the value is $3, which is the value of the cell, and we can see the report B have set the parameter order ID in a SQL query, which is satisfying the first condition. Then the order ID of report B will be set as the order ID in report A, as when you click on it. So for here, we have to make sure that parameter names are correct. It should be matched exactly with those in the target report, including the case sensitive. Otherwise, the target report will not receive the parameter. Now let's go back to the designer. We can save the file and take a preview. We can see the master report with all the order IDs with hyperlinks. Let's select 10366. It passed to the sub-report with the same order ID. Let's go back to the designer. And we notify that the parameter transform mode is get or post. The difference between get and post is that when we are using get, it is a more efficient way because the parameter will follow the URL. We can take a look. For here, we can see the order ID. But that may relate to some safety issue. If we change to post, the time consuming is longer, but it will not show in the URL the ID number. For example, we can see that the URL is not showing the order ID. Now let's go back to the report linkage structure again, and we will design the hyperlinks of report B. We can see that report B will pass order ID and product ID to report C. At the same time, the report C will return to report B and also inherit the report parameter. Here we open the report B, which is the order details, to add the hyperlinks of product ID. So we add the web report to C and choose current window. We will add two parameters here, which is order ID. The value should be a formula. We enter $, order ID, which means we get the order ID in the current report to pass. Then we add the second parameter product ID, and that should be $3, which means it is the current sale value to pass to the target report. For here, we change the name to Drill to C. We can add a back on the F5 cell, and we add a hyperlink to the back. Select Report A, open in current window. Because back to Report A does not need any passing parameters, so we don't need to add the parameters here. Then we open up Report A and take a preview. We select 1 or 3 to 6, and we can see it's changed to the order detail of, and we select back, it go back to report A again. Then we select 10319 and select 76, and we can see it's passed to report C. Then we can take a look how to set up report C. We can see report C receive order ID and product ID. It can also inherit report parameter to return to report B. Let's take a look at the passing parameters in hyperlink, which from report B to report C, it will pass two parameters, the product ID and order ID. So we open up the report C, and at the lower right corner, we add back and add a hyperlink to web report B, which we go back from C to B. We still open it in current window. We don't need to add the parameters, but we need to select Inherit Report Parameters, which means when the current report and the target report have the same parameter, we can select Inherit Report Parameters. We don't need to manually enter the parameters and values. The target value will automatically inherit the parameters in current report. But if in the target report there are other parameters, we can still add it manually. Then we go back to Report A and take a preview. Select 10325 and say Report B. Select product ID 6 and it moves to the Report C. We can select back and go back to Report B 10325. Then we can select back again. We can see we are back into the master report order list. Then somebody might ask why we need to pass order IDs to Report C when in Report C we don't need to edit anything about order ID. That's because we need to go back from Report C to Report B. If Report B does not pass the order ID to Report C, when we go back from Report C, we don't know which value we are going to return. So we need to set order ID in Report B as well, even though it doesn't useful in Report C. But when we return from C to B, we have to use this parameter. We can try without having order ID as a parameter. Let's delete this parameter and take a preview. Let's select 10414. And it's all set with the order details. Then we click 19. And we go to the Report C. But when we hit back, we are going to the Report B with 10248. The order ID is what we set as default, but not the one we want to return. That's because we didn't pass the order ID correctly from B to C. So for here, it's only go back to the default value. Thank you for watching.